In the immense, suffocating sprawl of Hive Primus on Armageddon, where the sun was a forgotten myth and the air was a chemical-laden fug, a boy named Lorin Dern dreamed of fire. Not the dirty, promethium-fed fires of the Manufactorum, but clean, righteous fire. The fire of the Emperor's angels. The fire of the Salamanders. He was small for his 12 Terran years, with nimble fingers meant for scrubbing pipe valves in the Hydrofurion Junction substation, not wielding bolters. But his heart was vast. At night, curled on his thin pallet in the cramped hab unit, the constant, rhythmic thump-thump-thump of the plasma conduits below his floor a lullaby of industry, he would listen to the tales on the stolen, static-riddled Voxcaster. He'd found it in a refuse chute, its casing cracked, but its spirit somehow still flickering. He'd spent weeks painstakingly repairing it, splicing wires, until it coughed back to life. The signals he caught were faint, often drowned by the Hive's own electronic cacophony. But sometimes, in the dead of the night cycle, he would catch a clear transmission. Imperial Voxcasts, news from the front, sermons from the ecclesiarchy, and once a glorious, spine-tingling account of the defense of Calderis. The voice of the announcer was thick with awe as it described the Salamander's chapter, the green-armored giants who called the volcanic world of Nocturne their home. They were described as steadfast as the mountains, their compassion as fierce as their wrath. They were not just warriors, they were protectors. They were known to shield civilian populations with their own bodies, to fight with a craftsman's care, their weapons and armor masterworks they forged themselves. To Lorin, drowning in the Hive's impersonal, grinding cruelty, they were a beacon of something pure, a purpose. His father, Goran, a stoic man whose back was permanently bent from a lifetime of levering stuck pressure valves, would scoff when he saw Lorin hunched over the Vox. Dreams won't fill your belly, boy. Dreams won't fix a leaking plasma coil. Steel and sweat, that's our lot. The angels don't care for the likes of us, buried down here in the guts of the world. His mother, Ilara, her face a delicate map of worry lines etched by years of counting ration credits and fearing foreman's whips, would simply sigh and run a hand through his dark hair, her silence a louder, sadder agreement. Lorin's world was a narrow one. The Hab block, a towering, crumbling monolith of rust and rockcrete, the Hydrofurion Junction, a cavernous space filled with hissing steam and the deafening roar of circulating coolant, and the routes between them, through narrow, trash-choked alleys where gangers held sway and the enforcers only ventured in packs. He knew the smell of ozone, the taste of recycled air, the grime that worked its way into your pores and never left. He did not know the feel of wind on his face, or the sight of a real horizon. The end of his small world did not come with a declaration of war, but with a whisper. The cult of the Twisted Helix had sunk its roots deep into the Hive's underbelly, a cancer growing in the dark. It began with strange, spiraling symbols scrawled on walls in what looked like blood and filth. Then came the missing persons, first the destitute and the forgotten, then skilled laborers, then even a few low-level enforcers. Whispers spread of a new, potent strain of bliss dust that didn't just intoxicate, but changed you. The night air itself began to taste different, thick with the cloying scent of ozone and an underlying note of decay, like meat left too long in a warm pipe duct. One cycle the power to their sector failed, not a common brownout, but a total, absolute blackness that was more than an absence of light. It was a suffocating presence. The great grinding heart of the Hive stilled, and in that profound, terrifying silence, new sounds emerged. Chanting from 1,000 throats, in a language that slithered and hurt the mind. Skittering, as of many limbs on rockcrete, and screams, not screams of panic, but screams of agony that were abruptly, horribly cut short. Lorin's father, his face grim in the single, failing glow stick they had activated, barred the heavy metal door with a length of reinforced scrap metal. His movements were calm, practiced, the actions of a man who had long expected the world to turn on him. His mother held Lorin close, her breathing quick and panicked, her heart hammering against his back. "Quiet as a mouse now," Goran whispered, his voice low and steady. "It'll pass. It always passes." But it didn't. The chanting grew louder, converging on their hab block. Then came the scratching at the door, a single, long, drawn-out scrape of metal on metal, then another, then a pounding, rhythmic and brutal. The door shrieked as something immense and powerful began to tear it from its hinges, the reinforced scrap metal bending like tin. Light from the corrupted lumen strips in the corridor spilled in, jaundiced and sickly, revealing the horror. The thing in the doorway had been a man once, a hulking, slab-muscled laborer from the look of its frame. But now its limbs were elongated, fingers tipped with chitinous claws. Its mouth was a distended maw of needle teeth, and one arm had mutated into a writhing, tentacular mass. Behind it, more figures writhed in the shadows, their forms shifting and wrong, their voices a chorus of wet, gurgling barks. Goran fought with the desperation of a cornered animal, his heavy industrial wrench cracking against the mutant's skull with a sound like a rock hitting wet clay. It was a futile, heroic gesture. The creature barely flinched, backhanding him with its clawed hand. Lauren heard the sickening crunch of bone, and his father fell against the wall, slumping to the floor, motionless. Ilara screamed, a raw, primal sound of loss and terror. She shoved Lauren hard towards a rusted, loose ventilation shaft cover he sometimes used to sneak in and out. Run, Lauren, into the ducts. Don't look back, don't stop. He saw the mutant grab her, its claws digging deep into her shoulders. Her eyes met his, wide with terror, but also with a final, desperate, commanding love. Live. Scrambling into the cold, tight darkness of the duct, Lauren did not see the end, but he heard it. The wet, tearing sounds, his mother's final, choked cry, and the rising, triumphant chant of the cultists. The sounds were etched into his soul with a white-hot brand, a memory that would never fade, only fester. He crawled, sobbing, snot and tears mingling with the grime on his face, through the labyrinth of metal. The sounds of slaughter and blasphemous praise faded behind him, replaced by the distant echoes of more screams and the occasional, reassuring crack of Imperial gunfire. But it was too late for his world. It was all too late. For 3 days he drifted through the underhive, a ghost among refuse and rats. He was a phantom in the ruins of his own life. He drank condensation from cold pipes and ate whatever he could scavenge, rancid nutrient paste packets, a nest of plump, blind grubs he found chewing on a cable. He saw the Imperial Guard patrols, the Kassakin in their dark carapace armor, sweeping through the purged sectors, their faces hidden behind grim-faced helms. They purged with flamer and hellgun, asking no questions, offering no comfort. To them, he was just another piece of human debris, another orphan of the endless war. He hid from them as much as from the cultists. Their mercy was a swift, impersonal death. Hope was a dead, cold ember in his chest. He found a hollow space behind a collapsed wall, curled up, and waited to die. He was so tired. The images of his parents' end played behind his eyes every time he closed them. The end, when it came, was not with a whisper, but with a world-shattering roar. It started as a deep, resonant thunder in the sky, a sound so alien and powerful it made the very ground tremble. It grew into a deafening, atmospheric scream. Through a crack in the ruined dome of his hiding place, he saw it, a spear of fire piercing the artificial sky of the hive. A drop pod, wreathed in the fury of re-entry, slamming into the district plaza like the Emperor's own fist, scattering debris and cultists alike. The hatch blew open with an explosive charge, and out they stepped. Astartes. They were giants, clad in power armor the color of deep forest rock and smoldering embers. Their pauldrons were marked with the proud, iconic Salamander emblem. They moved with a grace and power that was utterly alien to the hulking, clumsy brutality of the mutants. Bolters coughed thunder, each shot a precise, devastating execution. One of them, taller than the rest, his armor more ornate with draconic iconography, removed his helmet. His skin was like polished obsidian, his eyes glowing with a faint, reassuring red light, like the heart of a forge. He was scanning the area, his face a mask of grim determination and profound, simmering anger. This was it, the angels, the salamanders, the fire he had dreamed of. Driven by a final, foolish, desperate burst of courage, Lauren stumbled from his hiding place. His legs, weak from hunger and fear, gave way, and he fell to his knees before the giant, in the shadow of his immense, armored form. The other space marines raised their bolters, their targeting lasers painting red dots on his forehead and chest. But the leader held up a single, gauntleted hand, and the lasers vanished. "Please," Lauren croaked, his voice a raw, broken thing. They took my parents. They're the twisted ones in the hab block. I have nowhere to go." The giant looked down at him, his glowing eyes taking in the starved, terrified, filthy boy. There was no soft pity there, but there was something else, a deep, resonant understanding. A shared, burning sorrow, a fury that needed a focus. "I am Brother Sergeant Tavan of the Salamander's 3rd Company." His voice was a low, steady rumble, like tectonic plates shifting deep within the world. "The taint here will be cleansed, by fire and fury. This I vow." "He has the look of a survivor, Tavan," another Marine, Brother Prattle, said, his voice a grating bass from his helmet's vox grill. "Skinny as a underhive rat, but he found us. That takes a spirit the warp hasn't broken." Tavan knelt, the servos in his armor whirring softly. The act of kneeling brought his glowing eyes level with Lauren's. The ground itself seemed to acknowledge his presence. "What is your name, child?" "Eld Lauren Derns." "Do you wish to serve the Emperor, Lauren Dern, to pick up a weapon, not in vengeance, but in protection, to ensure that no other child suffers as you have, to become the fire that scours the darkness?" The question was immense. It filled the hollow, broken space inside him, not with warmth, but with a sense of direction. A path. Lauren looked into Tavan's eyes, seeing the unwavering fire he had always dreamed of. He saw a purpose. He nodded, fresh tears, cleaner this time, cutting paths through the battle grime on his cheeks. "Then your old life ends here, in the ashes," Tavan said, his voice firm, resonant, and filled with a strange, solemn kindness. "You are no longer a victim of this war. You are a candidate to end them. Come." He stood, a mountain rising from the plains. "We will take you to the pyre of Nocturne. There you will be tested. Your trials, Lauren, are only just beginning." As the massive, armored hand, capable of crushing his skull with a casual gesture, came to rest gently on his frail shoulder, Lauren felt a flicker of something he thought had died with his parents. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't safety. It was resolve. The dream was no longer a fantasy whispered from a broken vox. It was a path, steeped in blood and fire and sacrifice, and he had taken the first, irrevocable step. The Pyre of Nocturne was a world unto itself, a city of adamantium and faith sailing the starless void. To Lauren, who had never known anything but the enclosed, rusted canyons of the Hive, its vastness was both terrifying and exhilarating. The corridors were cathedral-wide, the ceilings lost in shadows illuminated by flickering lumen candles and the soft glow of plasma conduits. The air smelled of ozone, sacred oils, and something else, something clean. It was the scent of void-scrubbed atmosphere, of purity. He was taken from the thunderous launch bays, through halls adorned with towering frescoes depicting Vulcan and his sons battling great drakes and Xenos horrors, to the Apothecarian. Here the atmosphere changed. It was a place of stark, sterile light and chilling silence, broken only by the hum of advanced diagnostics and the soft, precise movements of the chapter's medici. They were not doctors in any conventional sense. They were masters of the flesh, artisans of the Astartes form. They subjected him to a battery of tests that made the Hive's physicals seem like a child's game. They drew vial after vial of blood, analyzing his genetic code for any hidden flaw, any trace of mutation or weakness. They tested his sight, his reflexes, his lung capacity in low-oxygen environments. They put him in a centrifuge, spinning him until his vision grayed and the G-forces threatened to crush him, measuring his resilience. They probed his mind with relentless questions about tactics, history, and the Imperial Creed. They used sick active resonators to plunge him into waking nightmares, forcing him to confront phantoms of his dead parents, of the cultists, testing his mental fortitude, searching for the slightest crack of fear, of doubt, of latent psychic affinity. He passed. He was deemed suitable, a neophyte. He was given a plain, gray tunic and led to the neophyte quarters, a Spartan chamber with rows of simple cots, a world away from the cramped, personal space of his hab unit. He was no longer Lauren Dern of Hive Primus. He was Aspirant 73 Gamma. His training was brutal, overseen by a grizzled drill abbot named Brother Kerak, whose face was a roadmap of old battles, a knotwork of scars, and whose left eye was a piercing red bionic. Kerak had no patience for weakness, for hesitation, for self-pity. "The galaxy is a pit of knives," Kerak would roar, his voice echoing off the training cage walls. "The Xenos would peel your skin for sport, the heretic would defile your soul. The mutant would devour your flesh. You are not here to become soldiers. The Imperial Guard has soldiers. You are here to become weapons, the Emperor's finest. You will be harder than the rock of Nocturne, sharper than the tooth of the great Drake." Loren learned to strip and reassemble a Godwin pattern bolter blindfolded, his hive-nimble fingers proving an unexpected asset. He learned the harsh, guttural language of the Astartes, low Gothic battle cant, and the lyrical, ancient tones of Nocturne. He was drilled for hours on the Codex Astartes, its tenets of warfare, and the specific Promethean creed of his chapter. He learned that strength was not just of the body, but of the community. "Into the fires of battle, unto the anvil of war," Kerak would bellow, and they would chant it back, their young voices trying to emulate the depth of a space marine's. "Vulcan's fire burns in each of us," Kerak taught, "but together we are an inferno that can scorch the stars." The other aspirants were from different worlds, harsher worlds. Some were from Nocturne itself, their bodies already hardened by a life of constant peril under a dying sun, their skin dark and resilient. They were stronger, faster, their muscles coiled springs of power. Loren, the hive rat, was physically outclassed. So he had to be smarter, more stubborn. He learned to use his small size and low center of gravity in close quarters combat, to anticipate his opponent's powerful but sometimes telegraphed moves, to endure pain and exhaustion without a sound. He thought of his parents, of Tavan's promise, of the fire in his dream, and he endured. He pushed himself until his muscles screamed and his mind went blank, and then he pushed further. Years passed. The scrawny, traumatized boy became a lean, hard-muscled youth, his body a canvas of fresh bruises and old scars. His mind, once filled with childish dreams and terror, was now a sharp, disciplined tool. He could calculate ballistic trajectories in his head, recite entire passages of the Codex, and spot a structural weakness in a fortification at a glance. He earned a measure of respect, even from the Nocturne-born, for his unyielding will. He was given a new name, one that acknowledged his journey, Loren the Unbroken. Then came the day he had both yearned for and dreaded, the day of the implants. He was led again to the apothecarian, but this time to the sanctified chrysalis chamber. It was colder here, the air humming with suppressed power. In the center was the slab, a thick, cold plate of polished steel, engraved with litanies of fortitude and purity. He was instructed to remove his tunic and lie down. As the heavy restraints locked over his wrists, ankles, and forehead, a primal fear, the ghost of the boy he had been, threatened to surface. Brother Sergeant Tavan stood at his head, a solid, unmoving presence, his own helmet off. His presence was an anchor. "The flesh is weak, Loren," Tavan said, his voice calm and steady, a rock in the storm to come. "It complains, it breaks, it fails, but our will is not of the flesh. Our will is of the spirit, tempered in the fires of sacrifice. Remember the fire. Let it guide you through the pain. Let it burn away your fear." The apothecary, Brother Malak, began his work. His Narthesium gauntlet word, deploying scalpels, drills, and injectors with terrifying precision. The first organ was the secondary heart. A long, hypodermic needle, thicker than Loren's finger, was pressed against his chest. With a pneumatic hiss, it punched through sternum and muscle. Loren felt a tearing, burning agony as the new, powerful organ was grafted into his cardiovascular system. It felt like being remade from the inside out, a violation of his very biology. He bit down on the leather strap in his mouth until his gums bled, his vision swimming with black and red spots. Next was the os medulla, the organ that would secrete hormones to strengthen and reshape his skeleton. He felt his bones groaning, thickening, lengthening. It was a deep, grinding ache that permeated his entire body, as if he were being crushed slowly in a vice. The biskopia followed, swelling his muscle mass, fibers tearing and reknitting with a blinding, fiery pain that eclipsed all his previous training injuries combined. Each new implant was a fresh hell, a unique flavor of torment. The Laraman's organ, a liver-shaped implant, was inserted into his chest cavity. Almost immediately, he felt its effect as a cut made by the apothecary for the next procedure sealed over in moments with a dark, ceramite-like scar tissue. The catalepsian node was injected into his brain, rewiring his neural pathways, stripping away his need for sleep, and replacing it with a fractured waking consciousness where reality and memory bled together. He relived the death of his parents 100 times, each more vivid and horrifying than the last. But now he was forced to watch it with a cold, analytical detachment that was itself a new kind of torture. The greatest trial, both physically and spiritually, was the progenitor glands, two tiny, priceless organs that would one day hold his genetic legacy, the very seed of a new salamander. Their implantation, deep in his neck and chest, sent a psychic shock through his system, a jolt of pure, undiluted Astartes essence that threatened to unmake his very soul. It was not mere pain, it was an ontological assault. He felt his identity, Lauren the boy, Lauren the aspirant, being scoured away, replaced by something raw, powerful, and terrifyingly alien. He felt as if he were being burned alive from the inside by the cold fires of the void and frozen solid by the heat of a star simultaneously. Through it all, he clung to one image, one mantra, the green armor, the fiery eyes. The promise of becoming a protector, a salamander. I am the fire, I am the anvil, I will not break. I will not die on this table. He repeated it, a prayer against the pain, a shield against the dissolution of self. He drifted in a sea of chemical-induced torment and psychic feedback for weeks. When he finally awoke, the world was different. It was more. The constant hum of the ship was no longer a monolithic sound, but a symphony of distinct frequencies. The thrum of the plasma drive, the whisper of the life support, the chatter of vox traffic from 3 decks away. The light was sharper, colors so vivid they hurt. He could hear the double beat of his own twin hearts and the slower, steady pulse of the apothecary standing across the room. He flexed a hand, and the power in his new muscles was intoxicating, a coiled, lethal potential he could feel in his very bones. He had survived. He was no longer Lauren, the hive-born boy. He was Lauren, neophyte of the salamanders, his body now a temple housing the divine instruments of war. He was assigned to a scout squad, 10th Company, under the direct command of Sergeant Tavan. It was a great honor. They were to be deployed to the contested world of Hellion Alpha, where a warband of the Crimson Slaughter was defiling an imperial shrine world, raising altars of skulls and spreading a psychic madness. As he stood in the launch bay, clad in his scout carapace armor, a lighter, more flexible suit than full-power armor, but still a significant step above flakweave, he held his sniper rifle, a beautifully crafted stalker-pattern bolter, with a reverence he once reserved for his dreams. He felt a profound sense of belonging, of purpose finally fulfilled. The tech priests chanted the rites of launch, anointing the drop pod with sacred oils and burning incense. The battle brothers of Tavan's squad, now his brothers, slammed their fists against their chest plates in a unified resonant boom that echoed in the bay. The vox bead in his ear, surgically implanted, crackled to life. "Neophyte Lauren," came Tavan's voice, steady and strong as ever. "Your first war awaits. Stand ready, keep your eyes sharp and your heart steady. The Emperor protects." "Ready, Sergeant, the fire burns." The drop pods hatch sealed with a final, deafening clang of adamantium. The world outside vanished. With a violent lurch, the pod was launched, a ceramic and steel coffin hurtling into the void, a spear aimed at the heart of the enemy. Lauren felt the immense G-forces press him into his restraint harness, but his new body barely registered the strain. He felt no fear, only a burning, righteous anticipation. He was ready to prove himself, to earn his plate, to become the fire that purges the darkness. The transition from the void to the warp was usually a controlled, sanctified process, guided by the navigator and shielded by the unwavering Geller field. This was different. As the strike cruiser Fireborn prepared to translate into the immaterium, a violent psychic shockwave, a backlash from the raging war on Hellion Alpha, slammed into its flank. It was a tide of raw, screaming madness from a world in its death throes. On the bridge, runic displays flickered and died. The Jeller fields stuttered, their protective bubble wavering. For a single, catastrophic second, the immaterium bled into reality. In the squad bay where Lauren and his brothers were making final preparations, the world turned inside out. The lights failed, plunging them into darkness, then flickered back on, now tinged a sickly, pus-like yellow. The air grew cold, a chill that seeped through their armor and into their enhanced bones. It tasted of copper, of ozone, and of something infinitely worse, rotten dreams and forgotten screams. The ship groaned, its ancient adamantium structure stressed to the breaking point, a sound of a great beast in its death agony. Then, as quickly as it came, it was over. A heavy, unnatural silence fell, more terrifying than the chaos. "All hands report." Tavan's voice was tight, controlled, but edged with a tension Lauren had never heard before. "What is our status?" "Primary power offline, attempting reroute," a tech marine's voice crackled. "Navigator is unresponsive, his third eye it by the throne," the vox cut into static. "Astronomican signal is gone," another voice reported, a note of barely suppressed panic. "We are blind, adrift." "Adrift where?" Brother Pratol's voice was a low growl. Before anyone could formulate an answer, the ship gave a final, sickening lurch. It was not the controlled motion of a vessel changing course, but the violent, uncontrolled tumble of a falling stone. The viewscreens in the bay flickered, showing a starfield for a moment, then died completely. The emergency lumens cast a bloody, unreliable glow. Through the main observation port, the serene black of the void and the pinpricks of distant stars were gone, replaced by a swirling, impossible landscape of violet and green, of fleshy pink and bruised orange. A giant, pulsing, lidless eye seemed to stare directly at them from the chaotic firmament. "A warp rift," Tavan said, his voice grim, the words hanging in the foul air like a death sentence. "We have been thrown clear. The Emperor's grace, we must have emerged into a nearby system." But it was not real space. When the crash alarms blared, a strangled, dying sound, and the ship slammed into something solid with a cataclysmic roar of tearing metal, they knew. The impact threw them against their harnesses with the force of a titan's footstep. Alarms died completely. The only light was the hellish glow from outside, filtering through cracked ports. They had crash-landed, but not on a world of rock and soil. "Kill team, combat formation," Tavan ordered, his bolter already maglocked to his thigh plate, his helm secured. "We secure the perimeter, find a defensible position, and assess the fireborne's status. Priority is survival and contagion protocol." They fought their way out of the wreckage, using melter-charges to blast through buckled bulkheads. The world outside was a living nightmare. The sky was a bruised, swirling purple, with impossible, non-Euclidean geometries shifting and folding in the clouds. The ground was a fleshy, breathing plain that yielded sickeningly under their boots, and in the distance, spires of weeping bone and braided sinew clawed at the heavens. The air reeked of ozone, spilled viscera, and a psychic stench of utter despair. This was no mere planet. It was a demon world, a cyst in reality, given form by the will of the dark gods. "No atmospheric toxins detected," Pratol reported, his bioscanner whirring. "The corruption here is metaphysical. It defies my instruments." They moved out, a diamond formation, their bootsteps silent on the spongy ground. Things that defied description soon found them. They were not demons of flesh and blood, but of pure concept given form. A shimmering, beautiful being that radiated an aura of such profound despair that Lauren felt his twin hearts clench with a desire to simply lie down and die. A creature of shifting, broken mirrors that showed each of them a vision of their own most gruesome, most personal death. Lauren saw himself, not as a space marine, but as a mewling, twisted cultist, sacrificing Tavan on a bloody altar. They fought with the discipline and fury of the Salamanders. Flamers coughed promethium, but the things burned with strange, colorful fires and laughed. Bolter shells tore through them, but they often reformed, their substance flowing like water. Lauren fought with the skill of a born warrior, his sniper rifle cracking, each shot a precise execution, aiming for warped eye sockets or blasphemous sigils that glowed with unnatural energy. But for everyone they felled, two more took its place. They were a bastion of fire and ceramite in an endless, hungry ocean of madness. "We are making no progress," Brother Hector voxed, his flamer running dry. "They are endless." "We do not need to win," Tavan responded, his voice a rock in the storm. "We need to survive, to endure. A rescue beacon was activated. We must hold." During a fighting retreat towards what looked like a canyon of pulsating, obsidian-like rock, a new horror emerged. It was a greater demon, a thing of Tzinch, a lord of change. It was a towering monstrosity of iridescent feathers, writhing tentacles, and a long, cruel beak filled with lies. It did not attack with claw and flame, but with sorcery. Bolts of multicolored lightning leapt from its staff, bypassing armor and searing the soul beneath. One such bolt caught Brother Hector, and he simply, unmade, his armor clattering to the ground, empty. The demon focused on Tavan. With a screech that sounded like 1,000 books being burned at once, it gestured. A barbed, corrosive limb, made of solidified chance and malice, materialized from the air and punched through Tavan's chest plate with a sound of tearing ceramite and cracking bone. The sergeant fell with a guttural cry, his armor systems shorting out in a shower of sparks, his lifeblood, thick and dark, pooling on the fleshy, breathing ground. "Sergeant," Loren screamed, the word tearing from his throat. He broke formation, ignoring Pratol's shouted order, and rushed to Tavan's side. The rest of the squad formed a desperate, shrinking circle around them, their fire a futile attempt to hold back the inevitable. Tavan's life was ebbing fast. His helmet was cracked, and Loren could see his face, pale beneath his obsidian skin. The familiar fire in his eyes was guttering, like a candle in a storm. "Leave me," Tavan voxed, his voice a wet, bubbling rasp. His real mouth moved, spitting blood. "The mission, the squad, it is your command now. Pratol, get them out." "I will not," Loren's voice broke, the neophyte overriding the warrior. This was his mentor, his savior. The man who had pulled him from the ashes and shown him a path to meaning. To leave him was to betray the very core of the Promethean creed they lived by. "We protect the innocent." Was a brother, a father in arms, not worth protecting? Was this not the very reason he had wanted to become a salamander? As the demonic press tightened, the laughter of the Lord of Change echoing in their minds, a new voice slithered into Loren's consciousness. It was not in his ears, but in his soul, a serpent of silk and logic. It was sweet, persuasive, and utterly, utterly vile. "You can save him," it whispered, its voice the sound of turning pages and shifting fate. So much potential wasted on this insignificant rock. His knowledge, his experience, his strength lost forever. A tragedy, an unnecessary flaw in the great design, but it need not be so. Loren shook his head, firing his rifle blindly at the shifting horrors. "Get out of my head, demon." "I am no mere demon. I am a weaver of destinies. I offer you a choice, a crossroads, a simple bargain, a mere gesture of faith. Pledge yourself to the great conspirator, to the architect of fate, and I will weave his fate anew. I will pull the threads of his life from the tapestry of decay. His wounds will close. His strength will return. You will both leave this place, champions of a new and glorious purpose." An image, more real than memory, filled Loren's mind. Himself and Tavan standing back to back, not in scout armor, but in magnificent, ornate power armor of blue and gold and green, bathed in a strange, multifaceted light. They were conquering worlds, not with brute force alone, but with cunning and sorcery, their bond unbroken, their glory unmatched. It was everything he had ever wanted. The camaraderie, the purpose, the power to make a difference, to save those he cared about. He looked down at Tavan, whose breathing was now shallow, his eyes closed. He looked at Pratol, whose ammunition counter was blinking red. He looked at the endless horde of nightmares. He saw only death, failure, and the extinguishing of the fire he had sworn to uphold. The voice was a siren's call in the storm of his despair. It offered hope where there was none. It offered a future where the Codex offered only a noble death. What must I do?" Loren whispered, the words a betrayal of everything he had become, tasting like the ashes of his former life. Say the words, make the choice, I accept the price. It was too simple, too easy. A lifetime of dogma screamed at him that this was heresy, damnation. But in his desperation, his noble, heartfelt desire to save his captain was being expertly twisted into the most profound and tragic betrayal. The very loyalty the Salamanders prized above all was to be their undoing. I accept the price, Loren breathed, the vow leaving his lips. The effect was instantaneous and horrifying. The world stilled. The demons halted their assault, watching with silent, malicious glee. A complex, ever-shifting symbol, the Aterode mark of Tzinch, burned itself into the flesh of Loren's forehead. He screamed, an agony not of the body, but of the soul, as he felt a part of himself tear away and be replaced by something cold, calculating, and infinitely hungry. Before him, Tavan's body shuddered violently. The grievous wound in his chest sealed shut, not with clean, pink scar tissue, but with iridescent, chitinous plating that pulsed with a soft light. His broken armor fused together, the green ceramite flaking away to reveal a new, blasphemous livery of shifting blue and burnished gold. He rose to his feet, his movements jerky, unnatural, as if a puppeteer was learning the strings. He turned to look at Loren, and where his fiery, determined eyes had been, there were now pits of shifting, kaleidoscopic light, holding galaxies of schemes and betrayals. There was no gratitude there. No recognition of the sacrifice made, only a cold, infinite, and ancient amusement. The voice of the demon, or perhaps now the voice of his new patron, echoed one last time in Loren's soul, laughing, a sound of shattering crystal. The price was never his life, little fool, it was his soul, and in bargaining for it, you have so delightfully given your own. Tavan, or the thing that had been Tavan, spoke, its voice a layered chorus of whispers from the depths of the past and the heights of the future. The game changes, my new apprentice. The first move has been played. Let us see what the board now holds. Loren looked at his hands. They were still his, but the skin was now tinged with the same unnatural cobalt blue, and his fingers seemed longer, more delicate, crackling with a faint, sorcerous energy. He felt power coursing through him, a psychic might that dwarfed his Astartes' enhancements, the power to twist reality itself. But it was a cold, hollow power, a poison that had already killed the boy who dreamed of fire. He had sought to become a salamander, a bringer of fire and protection. He had survived the hive, the trials, the scalpel, and the pain, all to stand here on the precipice of his dream. Instead, he had become a pawn of chaos, damned for all eternity by the one thing the salamanders valued most, his unwavering, tragic loyalty. He had saved his captain from death, but in doing so, he had extinguished the last, true ember of his own soul and corrupted the one he sought to save. In the hellish, chaotic light of the demon world, the tragic echo of his dream died forever, and the long, dark, scheming nightmare of his service to the changer of ways began.